It's again a great schus, tremendous pleasure and honor to learn together with the Ra'anana community and all those who join us. Thank you very much, Rav Hovitz, Rosh HaKollel, for the great opportunity. Today we're going to discuss Koyach HaLoshon, the power that we have, so much Koyach, to build and destroy, to heal, and Chas v'Sholom, to kill, just by using our words, using our mouth. But Potul b'lo chlum efshar, and we have to speak a little about Corona. We've been davening in the yards, we've been davening in the porches, and we have a rule. There is nothing that is not alluded to in the Torah. Where does it say in the Torah that we're going to daven in the yards during this year? The answer is a surprising answer. Last week's Pasha, Pashas Maseh, Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Yud Zayin. The Torah describes different traveling paths that Klal Yisrael took, and one of them is Vayachanu b'Chatzeros, and they encamped in a place called Chatzeros. Chatzeros in the Torah is spelled without the letter Vav. Vayachanu b'Chatzeros has the same numerical value as 780. That is our year. Taf Shin Pei is 780. To tell you that this year we're davening in the Chatzeros, in the yards. But what about the porches? I'm davening on a porch. A porch in Hebrew is mirpeset, and a mirpeset is a gematria, Tafshin Pei, 780. And that's, I think, pretty wild. So does this mean that we have to wait until Rosh Hashanah for it all to be over? Somebody just asked me that a little while ago, and I said, Chas v'Sholom, why wait till Rosh Hashanah? It doesn't say the entire year of Tafshin Pei. In fact, we find in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that Yudah Mudalef, there's an opinion that Yom Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana. One day of the year is counted like a whole year. And on Daf Beis over there, Amud Beis and Yud Amud Beis, we find another opinion. Shloishim Yom Bashana Chashuv in Shana. A month, 30 days is counted as a year. By now, we were both, by both opinions, Behidu, Hidu Rav. And therefore, Mitzvah Hashem, we are davening that it should all pass real fast. And it will happen by the koyach of our prayers. And there's a tremendous segula for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to accept our prayers, which is found at the beginning of our Pasha in Balaturi. Beginning of our Pasha, Shabbos, we're going to read Vayeschanan. Vayeschanan el Hashem ba'esahi leimor, and I implored to Hashem at that time. Why dafka now? What is ba'esahi? At that time, I daven. Why now? Asks the Balaturim. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu decide Vayeschanan right now? Why did he daven right there? Says the Balaturim, he reveals to us a great secret. The last pasuk in Parshas Dvarim ends with saying, Lo tiraum, ki Hashem Elokeichem, hu hanilcham lachem. Don't fear them, says Moshe Rabbeinu to Klal Yisrael, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is fighting for you. Don't worry. Listen to a language of Balaturim. Le'el, previously, the previous pasuk, Ksiv, the pasuk says, Lo tiraum, don't fear them. Said Moshe Rabbeinu, Chizakti es Yisrael, ulai yerachem alai. And that is the greatest secret. Yom mechazek ayid, ulai yerachem alai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem will have mercy on us. This is a segula for accepting all our prayers. We should be mechazek ourselves, we should be mechazek others. We should use the strongest weapon, most powerful weapon a yid has. That is the koyach of tefillah, our mouth. A good word, a good vote, a compliment. When you do that and you give chizuk to others, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will accept all our prayers with rachamim. So without further ado, we're jumping into a Lashon Hara business. Kind of frightening. But first we have to clarify, why is it called Lashon Hara? Grammatically, it doesn't make so much sense. Lashon Hara. If anything, you should call it Lashon Ra. Or if you want, Halashon Hara. What is Lashon Hara? Doesn't make sense. And therefore, some suggest we are reading it wrong. It's not Lashon Hara. It's Lashon Hara. Lashon with a shva, the two dots, one above the other. Lashon Hara means the tongue, the evil tongue of that evil person. Lashon of whom? Hara. Of that evil person who is using his tongue that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to learn Torah, to give compliments to others, and he's using it for something else. He is wicked. Wicked labrios and wicked lashamayim, and therefore, instead of saying lashon hara, some say leshon hara, the tongue of that evil person. Rabbi say, I want to tell you a very moving story. About 2.5 years ago, Parshas Lech Lecha, in the winter, 2.5 years ago, a man from Petach Tikva receives a call. Your son, unfortunately, was in a very, very bad car accident, and he was rushed to Beilinson Hospital. You should go there fast. And this guy runs to Beilinson Hospital, and in fact, his son was in bad, bad shape. He needed a head operation, and the only doctor that can perform this operation is this one guy in Eretz Yisrael, and he doesn't work for that hospital. So the doctors are telling the father, we're trying to get a hold of him, but we know that you are a man with a lot of connections. You should make some phone calls as well. And everybody is trying to reach his doctor, and this guy, in fact, the father was able to get a hold of the doctor. He got his personal cell phone. Doctor! Yes? Listen, my son, he's in bad shape. He needs his head surgery, and they're saying that you're the only one who can help him. Can you please rush to Beilinson Hospital and help us out? And the doctor says, I'm sorry, I can't right now, but as soon as I can, I'll be over there. Thank you so much. Thank you, doctor. Really appreciate it. Half an hour goes by. 45 minutes, an hour, no sign of the doctor. So the father picks up the phone again. He calls him, Doctor, my son is really, really not doing well. Really, really bad. Can you please come fast? And the doctor says, I can't right now, but as soon as I can, I'll be over there. Thank you very much, doctor. He hangs up, and they keep waiting. 2 hours. 2.5 hours from the first call he made. The doctor is not there. The father picks up the phone again. Doctor, can you please come fast? They don't know if he's going to make it. Doctor, please. And the doctor says, I can't come right now, but as soon as I can, I will. Thank you very much, doctor. 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours. After 4.5 hours, the father picks up the phone again. Doctor, can you please come now? And the doctor says, I can't come right now, but I promise as soon as I can, I will. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
So we are at 5 hours, 5.5 hours. The father doesn't know what to do. The doctors are saying he may not make it. It's a matter of life and death. The father picks up the phone after 5.5 hours, and the doctor answers, says, yes. Doctor, please, please come right now. The doctor says, as soon as I can, I'll be there. After 6 hours, finally see Doctor's car, drives, he pulls right next to the entrance to the hospital. He comes into the hospital, doesn't even say hello. Not to the nurses, not to the staff. He goes straight into the operating room, doesn't even say hello to the father. He goes in surgery, Baruch Hashem, performs the surgery. Operation is over, and he walks out of that operating room. Normally, what does a normal doctor do? He goes over to the family to discuss what just happened. He doesn't. He doesn't say goodbye to the nurses, doesn't say goodbye to the other doctors. He passes right by the father. And at this point, the father was fuming, and he couldn't take it anymore. And he starts yelling at him, Doctor, tell me, if this was your son, would you delay 6 hours as well? The doctor doesn't even look at him, and he continues walking. The father was going crazy, but only for a few hours. Because a few hours later, he found out that that morning, there was another car accident in Petach Tikva. The doctor's son was in a car accident, and he died. When he was making that first call to the doctor was making the preparations for his son's funeral. The second and third call that he made was while they're finishing the last details for the funeral, and the last call that he made, the doctor actually picked up in the middle of his son's funeral. His only son, And instead of going home to sit Shiva after burial, he came to the hospital to perform a surgery on his son. We don't judge anyone. We have no idea. We can't go into the father's shoes, not to the doctor's shoes. Could you imagine how the father felt afterwards when he realized this doctor is such a tzaddik, what he did for him? Only son. And yet, instead of going back home, he came to operate on his son. And why didn't he say hello? Because he was an avid, he was a mourner. A mourner can't say hello to anyone. That's why he didn't discuss with anyone. He just went back home to sit Shiva. How careful we have to be using our mouths. In Kiddushin Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph, Chazal say a strange statement. Toiv shebaroifim legehenom. The best of doctors, he goes to a very hot place. He goes to Gehenom. There are many, many different interpretations. The simple one is what the Maharsha explains. The best doctor is the one who thinks he really is the best doctor. And because he is so arrogant, thinking he is the best doctor, he doesn't consult with others. And because he doesn't consult with others, obviously some of his patients are not going to make it. And therefore, because they die, he goes to Gehenna. But I think I have 18 or 19 different understandings of this. Maybe one day we'll get to it, but some explain. What does it mean the best doctor goes to Gehenna? You know who the best doctor is? The one who speaks Lashon Hara. He is the best doctor in the world. Why is that? Because Rabbeinu Bechai and Choivas Alvavus tells us an amazing thing. If one speaks Lashon Hara, you know what happens to him? All his mitzvahs transferred to the person whom he spoke about. The person whom he spoke about, if he has any averos, they go back on the head of the person who spoke Lashon Hara. Now, why does a person get sick? Because the person sinned. The averos manifest themselves as a physical element. A person becomes sick because he has averos, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to awaken him to do tshuva. So if a person spoke about you, Lashon Hara, he takes all your sins and they are transferred to his account. If that's the case, the person will never become sick. He has no sins. There's no reason for him to become sick. So who's the best doctor? The best doctor is the person who spoke Lashon Hara because he removes all your sicknesses. So why do you get upset when somebody speaks Lashon Hara about you? You should send him a bottle of wine, chocolate, flowers for Shabbos, I don't know what, but you can't be upset at him. He did you the best, biggest favor in the world. In fact, another Maaseh, interesting Maaseh. Rabbi Leib Steinman, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodosh Livrocha, just passed away 2.5 years ago, Hanukkah. I'm sure you probably know. In the last 10 or so years, there were great demonstrations against him by certain Kanoim, zealot groups, who went really above and beyond the duty of call of being a zealot Michiganer. And they put ads all over, great billboards all over the newspapers, saying real harsh things about Maran Arav Shteiman, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. And one of the organizers of this whole propaganda against Arav Shteiman got married, and he didn't have kids for a few years. And then one day he did some cheshbon nefesh, did some introspection, and he realized, you know what, it's probably because I'm offending Arav Shteiman and I'm going against him. It's because of all the Lashon Hara. I'm telling you, it's because of this. And therefore he decided he needs to go ask Mechila from Arav Shteiman. So he goes into 5 Chazon Ish Street and he goes inside. He said, Rebbe, I came to ask your Mechila. Mechila? I don't even know you. What do you have with me? I don't think you ever did anything to me. And he said, you know, different ads have been going on all over for a few years. It's all me. And I got married. And I don't have kids. And I think it's because of that. Rebbe, please say that you're moichel me. And Rav Shteiman starts laughing. He says, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's no problem. It's no problem. No. Rebbe, please say that you're moichel me. And Rav Shteiman says, there's nothing to be moichel. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Rebbe, no. I'm telling you, I feel that I don't have kids. I discuss it with my wife. It's got to be because of this. I need to hear you saying, I am moichel you. Can you be moichel me? And Rav Shteiman says, there's nothing to be moichel for. Says, what do you mean? But I'm just telling you what I did to you for years. Of course there's something to be moichel for. And Rav Shteman says, come. And he picks out Sha'arei Kedusha from Reb Chaim Vital, the great Talmid of the Arizal, just had Arizal's Yotzeit a few days ago. And Reb Chaim Vital writes something remarkable. Reb Chaim Vital writes, Im hayu lecha einei secher. If you had just a drop of brain, not too much, just a little, you would get up in the morning and look for someone who would embarrass you throughout the day, because he is doing a great favor for you. Ki chaim ata mevakesh lecha. That's the language of Reb Chaim Vital. We all committed some sins here and there. We need to cleanse ourselves. What's better? To lose an arm? Chalila, one of your kids suffers, to lose all you own. So you got a little embarrassed. Says Reb Chaim Vital, it's the best thing in the world. Reb Moshe Cordovero, the Toimer Dvora, says the same thing. If you think a little, it will be the greatest thing for you to find somebody who would embarrass you. So therefore, Rav Shteman says to him, don't worry about it. This is great. I actually owe you a shekoyach. Thank you very much. And he smiles. So this guy starts smiling as well. And he says, no, so really, you're moichel me? I'm telling you, there's nothing to be moichel for. Yeshikoyach, I owe you a yeshikoyach. Thank you so much. Oh, well, okay, thank you very much. And he turns around and he's about to leave. And Reb Shteinman calls him back in and he says, but wait a second, I want to ask you something. I think that you did me a great toiva. Mamish, you did such a great favor for me. But please, don't do such favors to anybody else. This is how I take it, says Rav Shteman, but don't do any of these type of favors to anyone else. Reb Naftali of Amsterdam, he would ask, what would you do if you find out that your friend, person in shul, who married another wife in addition to his existing one? Would you give him an aliyah in shul? Of course not. Why not? Because he transgressed Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom. Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom. Rabbeinu Gershom, Meor HaGoyla, 1,000 years ago, made an institution one is not allowed to. We're Ashkenazim. We are very strict about it. When will they let him get an aliyah? When he's going to bring a letter from 100 Rabbanim. The way this institution was created is that in order to marry another wife, you need 100 rabbis from 3 different countries saying that, in fact, you are entitled to marry another wife, and then you can do it. Says the Naftali me Amsterdam. It could be that this Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom is not relevant anymore, because when Rabbeinu Gershom instituted it, he did so for 1,000 years. They have passed by now. So this Cherem of Rabbeinu Gershom is a Cherem of Rabbeinu Gershom. It's not a Rabbanon. It's definitely not a Dioraisa. It's a Cherem of one of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Gershom. But the law, the negative commandment of the Torah, Lashon Hara, is a Dioraisa, that is a Kodesh Baruch Hu himself who commands in us. So how is it that we tremble from the fact of, oh, Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom marrying another wife? Chalila, he's never going to get an aliyah in my shul. But we don't tremble of the thought of speaking Lashon Hara. Naftali would be very strict when somebody would say Lashon Hara. Once a Yid came to him and he wanted him to sign a petition. He's requesting to marry another wife, and he wanted him to be one of the 100 rabbis. And in the meantime, he's telling him all kinds of terrible stories about his existing wife. Naftali stopped him and said, did you already get another heter? A heter of 100 rabbis to speak all this Lashon Hara? And Shmiras HaLashon, Chofetz Chaim, Chelek Aleph Shara Tvuna, Perek Yud Zayin. The Chofetz Chaim writes something which is startling, and we better think about it really, really well. Yisboinein ha'adam v'yeda. One should observe this and know. That at the time one speaks Lashon Hara about his friend. Gam lemala mazkirin hamalochim es avonoisav. At the same time, the angels, prosecuting angels, mention to HaKadosh Baruch Hu his own sins. If you think that's harsh, wait till you hear this one. Now comes an atom bomb. This is frightening. Says the Chafetz Chaim. Reuven that sees Shimon chasing after Levi and he wants to kill him. What does Reuven have to do? Shimon, who is holding a gun and running after Levi, is called a pursuer. He is called a roidif. And as such, Reuven has a mitzvah to kill him. It's a mitzvah. Mitzvah, go and kill him. That's what he has to do, and he's going to do it. Says the Chafetz Chaim. But if later on in life, Reuven, who killed Shimon here, and he did a mitzvah, he will kill himself, someone else, retroactively, what he did with Shimon is not called a mitzvah that he killed a pursuer. It will be called a murderer. The heter that he had before to do this was uprooted. How in the world does the Chafetz Chaim know such a thing? The Chafetz Chaim didn't invent it. He brings it from the Smak, Simen Reish Pei Gimel, in the name of the Riva. These are Raboteinu Arishonim. And they both say that even those people who we are commanded to kill them, we have a mitzvah to kill him, like a person who's chasing after an engaged girl. Or, like we said, you see a friend running after his friend to kill him. Not so sure they're so friendly, but you see Reuven running after Shimon to kill him. They both say, the Smak and the Riva, that one who kills them has to be very, very careful from what is called avak shelahim, their dust. Just like there's avak lashon hara, the dust of lashon hara, so too there is avak to other sins. Why? Because if chas v'shalom, later on in life, the person who killed, and he did a mitzvah when he did so, will kill himself, that which he did back then, could be 5 years ago, could be 25 years ago, will be counted as if he spilled innocent blood. Where did they get this from? It's Rishonim, but where did they get this from? They get it from the Navi. Melochim Beis, Perek Yud. The Navi tells a story about Yehu. Yehu was punished for spilling the blood of the house of Achav. Achav was a wicked, wicked king. And Yehu was commanded by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through the mouth of the Navi, to kill the house of Achav. And even though he did a great service to Klal Yisrael, Achav served Avodah Zarah, and by that he destroyed all the Avodah Zarah from Klal Yisrael. And when killing Achav, he found favor in the eyes of Hashem. So much so that the Pasuk over there, Pasuk Lamed, says that for that, he was given Melucha, kingdom, for 4 generations. Why 4 generations? Because he destroyed the house of Achav that ruled for 4 generations. Therefore, he received Melucha, kingdom, for 4 generations. So thus far, he's doing great, right? And even though later on in life, when Yehu himself stumbled on Avodah Zarah, he served Avodah Zarah b'shoigeg. That's what the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Kuf Beis. Yet, it's counted as if he has the sin of killing Achav. That is what the Pasuk says, the beginning of Hosea, Ufakadeti et Dmei Yisrael. And Chazal explained the house of Achav, who was killed in Yisrael. The Pasuk says, I will punish Yehu for that. But wait a second. How is that possible? He did a great service. He did a mitzvah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was so happy, he gave him Melucha for 4 generations. And when he later on stumbled on Avodah Zarah b'shoigeg, yep. But retroactively, you show that when you did what you did back then, it wasn't 100% clean. And if that's the case, what he did to Achav is called Retzicha, a murder. And this is already clear in the Ramban, in Parshas Lech Lecha, Tesvav Yudalid. The Ramban says, when there's a Gzeira by the Navi, the person does it because he hears the Gzeira, he hears the Navi, and he understands this is the will of my Creator. When he does so, there is no sin involved. There is only a zchus. And in fact, he brings a proof from Yehu, which we just brought down. However, says the Ramban, Avalim Shama HaMitzvah, but if he heard from the mouth of the Navi, what you have to do, you have to kill someone. And he killed him because he hated him, or for any other ulterior motive, Yesh Alav HaOynesh, he will be punished because he intended to sin, and it is counted as an Aveira. That is what the Ramban says. Says the Chafetz Chaim, a person who's about to speak Lashon Hara, and he has all the 7 conditions. Later on, we'll see what those are. He has all the 7 conditions, halachic definitions for permission to say Lashon Hara. But if in the future he will stumble on the sin of Lashon Hara, retroactively, that Lashon Hara that he said now with a heter of 100 Rabbonim will be uprooted, and it will be counted as if he spoke Lashon Hara without any heter. And if you think this is harsh, it doesn't stop there. Yeida benafsho, says the Chafetz Chaim, you should know. Not only for the future, if later on, okay, so you'll be careful. But if in the past as well, you transgress Lashon Hara, and now you're about to say Lashon Hara with all the 7 conditions, now you're allowed to, you have a heter from the Chafetz Chaim himself. No, it will be counted as if you're saying Lashon Hara. Says the Chafetz Chaim, when one reads this, he should tremble. In fact, I'm trembling when I said this, and I prepared this, so I already know this, but it's frightening. If you sinned in the past in this matter, or if you're planning to in the future, if you're not planning, even if it's going to be b'shoigeg, it's going to retroactively be counted as if what you did now, which was a mitzvah, will turn into an aveira. The Chafetz Chaim brings another proof to this from a Gemara. An amazing Gemara tells us a Maaseh in Yevamos Kufei Amud Beis. The holy Tanoim, Rabbi Chia and Reb Shimon, who were the sons of Rebbe, Yehuda HaNasi, they were sitting outside Beis HaMedrash, and they were discussing Hilchos Tefillah. Rabbi Yishmael Bar Yosi, another Tana, comes and joins, and they're discussing Hilchos Tefillah. In the meantime, Rebbe came to the yeshiva, and he's about to give a shir. The Gemara says, because they were lightweight, Reb Chia and Reb Shimon, the sons of Rebbe, they quickly ran to their place, and they sat in their place, waiting for the shir to start. But Rabbi Yishmael Bar Yosi, he was, shall we say, he had a substantial caloric advantage. Is that a proper politically correct way of saying it? He was a big man. And because of that, wait a second, let's pause here for a second. I'll give you something to remember for Purim. I always say a riddle. Remember this for Purim, write it down. Where do you find a Tana, not a Tanoim, in Megillas Esther? Can this even be? A Tana, the era of Tanaim, as far as I know, started much later than Megillas Esther, and yet, you can unmute your mics. Where do we find a Tana, a Sephardi Tana, not an Ashkenazi one, a Sephardi Tana in Megillas Esther? Any idea? You can unmute your mics, my friends. A Sephardi Tana in Megillas Esther, a riddle for Purim, 2 days before Tisha B'Av. Very strange. The answer is, remember, it's a Sephardi Tana. In Megillas Esther, we find Big Tana, Big Sana. It's not for Ashkenazim, because Ashkenazim will pronounce it Big Sana with a Saf and not a Taf. But Sephardim will pronounce it Big Tana. And if you break it in two, that's a Big Tana. Big Tana, Big Tana, a giant Tana. Anyways, Rabbi Yishmael Bar Yosi was one of those big Tanoim. He was very big, he was heavy. The Gemara says so. In fact, in Bab Metzia Pei Daled Amud Aleph, the Gemara says that when Rabbi Yishmael Bar Yosi met with Rabbi Elazar, another Tana, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, 2 bulls would walk under them when they were talking, and they wouldn't even feel it. They were tall, they were big, and therefore, because he is very heavy, he was walking slowly, and the shir already started. Avdan, one of the Tanoim, asks, who is this that's walking on our heads? Who is this? Shemefasea al Roshei Am Kodesh. What are you doing walking in the middle of the shir? That's not exactly humility. Stay in the back of the shul and listen from there. And Rabbi Yishmael Bar Yosi answers him, I am Rabbi Yishmael Bar Yosi, and I came to hear Torah. I wanted to learn from Rabbi. And the Rishonim explained, he told him, listen, I'm an Adam Gadol. And it's right that I will sit next to Rabbi. It's covered to Rabbi that I will sit there. And therefore, it's not a zilzul in the other Talmidim who are sitting here that I'm walking when they're already sitting. But Avdan insists, this is not humility. You don't do this. And Avdan asks him, do you think you're Bichlal Ra'ui? Is it appropriate for you to learn from Rabbi? Rabbi is a symbol of humility. We learn in Soita Mem Tes Amud Beis. When Rabbi died, Anava has gone from this world. So what you're doing right now is not exactly Anava. Do you think you're even worthy of sitting and learning by Rabbi? And Rabbi Shmuel answers, was Moshe Rabbeinu worthy of learning from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Can you compare Moshe Rabbeinu's another. Moshe Rabbeinu is the most humble man who ever lived, but is he as humble as a Kodesh Baruch Hu? No. And yet he studied from a Kodesh Baruch Hu, so I too can learn from Rebbe, even though there's a gap between us. And Avdan says, is your name Moshe? And Rabbi Shmuel answers, is your Rebbe God? And while they're discussing this and the shir goes on, suddenly a Yevama, a young Yevama came. And she was very close to the age of 12. They weren't sure if the chalitza that she had was kosher or not. And Rebbe, in the middle of the shir, tells Avdan, the one who was just arguing with Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi, go out and find out what exactly is the age. Check the ID, the passport number, the Tudat Zehut of this girl to find out if it was a kosher chalitza or not. Fine, Avdan does this. He goes outside, and when it's done, he walks back into the Beis Medrash to continue hearing Rebbe's shir, and guess where he's going? Instead of sitting in the back, he is going all the way to the front where he was sitting before. And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi says to him, excuse me, where is your anava? You're a posea al Roshei Am Kodesh. You're walking on our heads. Excuse me, you have to practice what you preach. What about what you just told me 5 minutes ago? The Gemara ends this ma'aseh by saying, at that time, nitztareya Avdan. Avdan got tsaras because he embarrassed Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi. V'tav'u shnei banav. Both his sons, who were married, drowned. Ume'anu shtei kaloisa. Both his daughter-in-laws who were married to these sons annulled their marriage. You know, when you make an aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, you usually have a lift, a tzim container. This is a tzim container, maybe even two tzim containers of yisurim, afflictions of the highest level. The great Tana, Avdan, was punished with such a harsh punishment. Why? And if this punishment was coming to him, because he upset Rabbi Shmuel, what he did to him, what he said to him, why wasn't he punished at the time that he said what he said? Why now? The Chofetz Chaim explains. Avdan had a great time. He had a great claim. We're sitting here. It's not really nice what you do. You don't walk in the middle of the Beis Medrash in the middle of the shir. But Rabbi Shmuel, he had his own svara, and maybe he's right. That's Darka Shel Torah. That is the way of Torah. They're arguing. Maybe they're both right. But if you yourself later on stumble on the same thing, retroactively we see that what you said before wasn't 100% pure and clean. We don't have any hasaga. We don't have any understanding what Tanaim are. But this is what the Shmiras Halacha Chofetz Chaim explains. And therefore the Gemara says, at that minute is when Avdan got his punishment, because now it became clear retroactively how careful we have to be. The Be'er Yosef says the same idea you can see by Esav Arasha. We're going back to the Torah to find this. In Chazal it says, at that day, like Yaakov Avinu told him lentil soup, he came very tired from the field because he committed 5 major averos. One of them, he killed a person. Who did he kill? Chazal tell us. Nimrod Harasha. So wait a second, what's the problem? Is that considered a sin? He killed Hitler. Baruch Hashem Givaldik. It's a mitzvah. Why is it called an avera that he killed a person? What a person? It's Nimrod. It's Hitler. But now, when Esav himself became wicked like him, it's not counted as a mitzvah anymore. Now it's counted as an avera. How careful we have to be. In many of the Sidurim after Tfilas Shachris, there are 6 remembrance, 6 zechiros, daily things that one has to say, one has to think about. One of them is Loshon Hava. A pasuk from Parashas Kisei, it says, Zachor es asher asa Hashem Elokecha leMiriam baderech b'tzei Yisrael miMitzrayim. Remember what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to Miriam, but it doesn't end here. The pasuk continues, baderech, when you were traveling on the way, when b'tzei Yisrael miMitzrayim, when you were leaving Egypt. Asks the Chofetz Chaim, wait a second, superfluous 3 words. Why do you have to tell me it was when you're traveling? And don't I know it was when they're traveling? I read in the Pasha. You have to tell me it's B'tseisre Mitzrayim? Would I think it's when you left Spain or the States. I know they just left Egypt. I was following every week in the Pasha. Ask the Chafetz Chaim, why can't you settle for saying, Zachor, remember, Es asher asa Hashem Elokecha leMiriam, or HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to Miriam. Is it really important to say Baderech, along the way, when you're traveling? When you left Egypt? Says the Chafetz Chaim, he was once on a train. And there was a mother and her daughter on the train with him. And he saw the Goyish family. And the mother was cold. So she went to the window and she closed the window. 2 seconds later, her girl gets up and she opens the window. Oh, chutzpah. The mother gets up again. She closes the window. 2 seconds again. The daughter, she's hot. She opens the window that her mother just closed. This happened for the 3rd time. The mother gets up. She closes the window. And the daughter gets up right after and opens that same window. The mother looked at her daughter and she said to her, you just wait until we come home. You're going to get it when we come home. Says the Chafetz Chaim, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. What's the key word? Baderech, when you're traveling. Because normally when you're traveling, you don't punish. You don't punish your kid when you're going on a vacation. When you're traveling somewhere, you're not punishing someone when you're traveling somewhere. But here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wasn't willing to wait. HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished for the sin of Lashon Hara that Miriam transgressed. Baderech. Normally, when there's a simcha, there's a bar mitzvah, there's a wedding, you don't punish your kid at the time of a simcha. Not shayach. But here, the pasuk says, "Betzeischem Mitzrayim." You don't have a greater simcha than that. We left Mitzrayim, and yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "No. We have a wedding to catch, all of us together." But no, I'm not willing to be moichel. Lashon hara. Therefore, the pasuk says, not only you should remember what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to Miriam, remember when it was. Baderech, when you're traveling, normally you don't punish when you're traveling. And when was it? The time of Simcha, B'tzeischem in Mitzrayim. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished. There's a remarkable ma'aser that appears in Shalosh HaTshuvos Afarkasta de Anya Chelek Aleph Siman Kuf Samechei. This appears as well in Sefer Mate Levi in the Hakdama. There was a city called Kempne in Europe. And a guy by the name of Shimon came there. And he had the most beautiful chazanus, a voice that you can ever think of. He would sing. It was just beautiful, beautiful. And the people in the Kehila wanted to hire him to be the Shliach Tzibur. He should be our chazan. And they came to the local rabbi, Rabbi Soel Yana, the author of Ma'on HaBrachos. And they asked his haskama. He should agree. He didn't want to agree. Because this guy was a Baal Aveira. He transgressed certain Aveira publicly, and he didn't feel that it's appropriate for a person like this to take all our prayers and to try and to bring him up to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Not shaykh, he can't be our chazan. But the people of the Kehila really insisted. They never heard anything like it. This guy was the #1 chazan of the world. And Rabbi Yisrael Yonah realized that from this will be a great machlokes, and he didn't know what to do. Should he continue fighting this or not? He wrote a letter to Rabbi Yosef Av Beis Din de Pozna. Who's Rabbi Yosef Av Beis Din de Pozna? The son-in-law of the Noida Beyehuda. And he told him a whole ma'aser. And he wrote it in a very interesting way. The Gemara in 4 places in Shas says, Shimon HaAmsuni would darshan all the esin in the Torah. There's 3,600 times that the word es appears in the Torah. And we know that the word es always is there to do something. To be merabe, to include, to increase, to add. Because grammatically speaking, you could live without it. So Shimon HaAmsoni would darshan all the esim in the Torah until he reached the pasuk in Parshas Vayischanan. The pasuk says, "Es Hashem Elokecha tira." You should fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the word "es" appears here as well. That means you have to fear someone else other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore Shimon HaAmsoni piresh. He stopped. The Gemara continues and says this continued on until Rabbi Akiva came along and he said, "Yes, you have to fear Talmidei Chachamim as well." But Rabbi Yisrael Yonah wrote to Rabbi Yosef Av Beis Din de Pozna, Shimon, this Shimon, our Chazan, Doiresh kol esin shebatoira. He also darshans, just like Shimon Amsoni, all the esin in the Torah, all the word es. Es ha-chazir, es ha-treifa, es ha-nevela. He adds just all the averos that you can possibly think of. But once he reaches, kevan shehigia le'es Hashem Elokecha tira, pirish. But once he reached the fearing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's when he stopped. In other words, he's saying to him, we have a great chazan here. But he's a serious Baal Aveira. Rebbe, tell us what to do. Rabbi Yosef Mipozna answered with only 6 words, and these 6 words you should engrave on your heart. Listen close to what he said to him. Mutav lehamid tselem baheichal milehachazik b'machloikes. Better to put a statue in the sanctuary than to hold on to a machloikes. We have to practice these 6 words like we know by heart. Asher yoshve veisecha od yaralucha sela. That's also 6 words. You know them, right? You know that by heart. You have to know these 6 words by heart. Mutav lehamid tselem baheichal milehachazik b'machloikes. Better to put a statue in the middle of a Beis Hamikdash and to hold on to a machloikes. Unbelievable. Where does he get it from? The Chassam Sofer writes similarly. Or Chaim Simon Reishei. The Chassam Sofer also discusses removing a chazan who's a rasha, and he says seemingly we have to remove him. However, if, and he's speaking to a rabbi of a kehillah, Chassam Sofer says, if you see that it's going to cause greater machloikes, don't touch this. Because anyways, he says the chazanim in our days are not moitzias like they used to in yesteryears. All they do, and I hope there's no chazanim in the audience who will be offended, but the Chassam Sofer says all they do, the great chazanim, is they put their hand on their chin and they yell, so everybody will be impressed. And you could think a Kodesh Baruch Hu is impressed with what they have to say. So what's the difference if they take this chazan or another? That's what the Chassam Sofer says. But where did they get this unbelievable chumrah? Mutav leha mitzelem baheichal. By now, you know it by heart already. Is that really so? Is it better to put a statue? It could be that the answer to that is looking at Menashe. Menashe was a wicked king. And Menashe did just that. He put a statue in Beis Hamikdash. And when he did so terrible decrees, he failed Klal Yisrael. But the Beis Hamikdash wasn't destroyed. And the Kedusha of the place was not nullified. But when there was a machloikes in the time of Bais Sheni, as we know from the Gemara in Yuma Daf Tes, there was a destruction. You see, it's better, as if you had the choice to put a statue in Beis Hamikdash, stay away as much as you can from machloikes. We also see in Chazal that the generation of Achav, even though they would worship idols, they would go to war and they would win because there was remarkable unity among us. Among them there were no Baalei Lashon Hara. In the time of Shaul, there were great Lamdanim, great Talmidei Chachamim, but there were Baalei Lashon Hara among them. They would go to war, and not always would they win. Since this community has such Talmidei Chachamim, the people who join us, I want to ask you a shayla, an interesting shayla. There was a rabbi in Bat Yam who gives a daf yomi. He has a group of about 10 people, Balebatim, nice people. It's already 10 years every single day. They meet at 5:30. Great shir. But a new Talmid came along. This guy is a butcher. And he works the whole day in the supermarket. And he cuts the fish and the meat. And the smell that comes out of him is not so pleasant. So the guys sitting around him just can't take it. The rabbi is very, very bothered by it, and he can't continue to give the shir. And the rabbi wanted to know, what should be better to do? Cancel the shir. Can't continue this way. Or go to the butcher and say, listen, we're so happy that you came. We're so happy that you joined our shir. But I'm sure you know what you do for a living, and it's very difficult for us. Maybe if you want, we can push off the shir. We can start at 6 o'clock instead of 5:30. Go home, take a shower, and then join us. Or maybe we should just cancel the shir, because no matter how you say it, The butcher will be insulted. So better just to cancel the shir and that's it. What should we instruct the rabbi to do? The rabbi was very confused. And therefore he asked that maybe I can present this shaila to the Talmidei Chachamim who are joining us this evening. What's better to do, Rabbi Stein? Cancel the shir completely. Chalila, to embarrass a yid. Or minimize the embarrassment. Go to him, mano a mano. Should go to him privately and say, listen, it's very difficult, you know. You know what you're doing. It's not like you don't know. You know what your profession is. Go home, take a shower. We'll wait for you. My friends, what do you think?
Change to a Zoom shear.
I'm sorry, if you can speak a little louder.
Change to a Zoom shear.
Still can't hear you. I'm going to see if I can hear you now better. Say it again.
I said, change it to a Zoom shear.
Did you say cancel the shear?
No, change it to Zoom.
Very good. And what if Khalila, there's a few more people in the world still that don't have Zoom. Apparently they're still there, they exist. But what if it's before Zoom era? What do you do then, my friends? What's the right thing to do?
I would say, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Although we say Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, and yet we know that embarrassing somebody is obviously, it seems, paramount. The reality, the truth of this question would be, it depends on the character of the person. If he would take it nicely, then yeah, you could tell him. But if he's going to take it very harshly, and if that's what it seems like, then I would guess no.
And what if he's a newcomer and we just don't know? He's just been with us for a few days. What we do know is that we can't take it anymore, but we don't know how he will take it. What's the right thing to do here? What I'm looking for is some kind of a source. This is a Beis Din. And in Beis Din, we need documentations. We need some kind of a source. Chumash, Shas, Poiskim, give me something. So let's try. Let's try to explore this. Diving into Masechet Sanhedrin. Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Rebbe, the same Rebbe Yehuda HaNasi, which we mentioned before, he was giving a shir. And suddenly he smells garlic. Somebody ate garlic here before. Rebbe can't continue with the shir. And Rebbe says, whoever ate garlic should please stand and leave this place. Reb Chia got up and he left. Reb Chia never ate garlic. He can't stand garlic. Or maybe he does every Friday night because the mitzvah to eat garlic. But Reb Chia never ate garlic back then. He is not the one who ate garlic just before the shir. But after Reb Chia left, everybody in Beis Medrash left. The shir was canceled. In the morning, Reb Shimon, the son of Rebbe, meets Reb Chia and he says to him, are you the one who caused sorrow, pain, and anguish to my father? And Reb Chia says, that I would eat garlic? There's a machlokes Rashi and the Maharsha. What exactly happened here? Rashi explains. Reb Shimon asked Reb Chia, why did you cause sorrow to my father by eating garlic? And Reb Chia says, Chas v'shalom, I didn't eat any garlic. But in order not to embarrass the person who really ate garlic, I got out. And when I did, everybody else would, and then nobody would know who is really the person who ate the garlic. But the Maharsha argues on Rashi, and he says, wait a second. If everybody left, so then you know that it wasn't Rabbi Chia that ate the garlic. So why did Rabbi's son, Rabbi Shimon, ask, was it you? And therefore the Maharsha says differently. The Maharsha explains, everybody knew that he was not the one who ate garlic, and therefore everyone came out of the shir. So what did he mean when he asked him, are you the one who caused sorrow to my father? He was asking him, are you the one who canceled, in essence, the shir? You shouldn't have walked out. Only the one who ate the garlic should have left the Beis Medrash. And Reb Chia says, no. Lo tehe kozos b'yesor, no way. You're right. Bitul Torah is a grave sin. But to embarrass a Yid is much worse. And therefore, it's better to cancel the shir than to embarrass a Yid. Seemingly, this is exactly our case. According to the Maharsha, we have a machlokes, Rebbe and his son Reb Shimon, and on the other hand, Reb Chia. Are you allowed to embarrass the person in order not to cause a bitul Torah? Rebbe and Reb Shimon say no. Reb Chia says yes. Do you know how to paskin on a shayla like this? What happens when Reb Chia argues with Rebbe and Reb Shimon? Do we have the tools? How to decree a machlokes like this? We have something similar in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer and the Medrash Perek Aleph. Perek Aleph and Perek Beis and Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is a very moving chapters of how Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus became Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus. We're not going to go through the whole story. But Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus, until the age of 28, didn't know Aleph Beis. And he left everything behind. His father was one of the richest guys in the world. But he wanted to learn Torah. And he went to Yerushalayim to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And he studied there. His father banned him from all his assets. And he didn't eat anything for 8 days. And you imagine the smell that came out of him. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, please don't stand so close. And Rabbi Eliezer would cry. And Rabbi Yochanan said, why are you crying? And Rabbi Eliezer answered him, because you treated me like a person who has shchin, boils. You don't want me close to you. Rabbi Yochanan said, my son, כשם שעלה ריח פיך מלפני, כך יעלה ריח חוקי תורה לפני הקודש ברוך הוא. Just like the smell came out from you in front of me, so too the smell of your delicious Torah would go in front of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. The Radal explains on the Medrash that the Rabbi Yochanan didn't do anything wrong by embarrassing Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus, as is proven from the Gemara we quoted with before from Sanhedrin. You see that the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai held that there's no issue of embarrassing a person if he's disrupting the normal course of our shir. So maybe in our case as well, we should say that we can tell the butcher, listen, please don't come in when you're smelling like this. And if you want, we're willing to wait. It could be that even according to the Maharsha, that Rabbi Chia said, it's better to cancel the whole shir. That's only when you're canceling in front of everybody. When you're embarrassing him in front of everybody. Rebbe, remember, asked in front of everybody, who is the one who ate the garlic? But in our case, when you can go privately, the rabbi can call this guy up or one of the other participants, explain to him privately. It's not such a great embarrassment. Maybe even according to Rebbe Chia, this will be muta, because he's not embarrassing him publicly. However, maybe there's a different chiluk. In Sanhedrin, with Rebbe and the garlic, the matter was just to cancel one shir today because somebody ate garlic. Here, when the butcher comes all the time, if we're going to tell him, if we're not going to tell him because we want to avoid embarrassing him, the shir will be canceled completely. So maybe we should be allowed to tell him. The rabbi didn't know what to do with this, the rabbi from Bat Yam, and therefore he decided to go to Rav Shteiman, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. And Rav Shteiman told him, what are you comparing that Gemara from Sanhedrin? What's the comparison? A student needs to know. Garlic doesn't smell so pleasant, and many people are bothered by it. Why did you have lunch just before? You're a posheya. You did something very wrong. And therefore, Rebbe had the right to embarrass him. But our butcher, what is he doing? He's doing something wrong? He's doing a mitzvah. He's working in order to supply meat to the whole neighborhood so they will have something for Oneg Shabbos and Oneg Yontif. Here, maybe even Rebbe would admit you're not allowed to embarrass him. What do you want him to do? Switch jobs? And therefore, Reb Shteiman says, Chas v'sholom, don't embarrass Sayyid. Cancel the whole shir if you need. Don't embarrass Sayyid. How careful we have to be. So we mentioned before, the Chafetz Chaim says there are 7 conditions that have to be met before you can open your mouth and say a Lashon Hara, nice, juicy, sweet Lashon Hara. For example, you need to have some kind of a benefit, to'eles, from the Lashon Hara you're about to say. Let's say you see a con artist. He's pretending to be a poor person. He goes and collects money. in order to prevent people from casting their money, from throwing it when it's not needed, you're allowed to say Lashon Hara. But the Chafetz Chaim in Hilchos Lashon Hara Klal Yud Halacha Beis explains this heter is only when the 7 conditions are met, and they are: the first one, that you should see what you're about to discuss yourself, or that it should become clear to you, not based on hearsay. My friend told me that his friend said that I think that. That's not enough. Second condition, as soon as you hear what you heard, don't decide on the spot, I'm going to reveal it to everybody. Wait. Think about it really well. Is this one of the things that the Torah allows you to discuss? Third condition, that first you should rebuke the person that you're going to speak about, softly. Fourth, no exaggerations. When you say Lashon Hara Letoeles, with all the conditions, it has to be 100% emes, no exaggeration. You have to have a kavanah. This should be letoeles. I'm doing this to benefit others, to help. Not because I'm going to enjoy this delicious Lashon Hara, and not because I hate this person from before. If there is another way of getting this benefit without saying Lashon Hara, you're not allowed to say Lashon Hara. If you can minimize the Lashon Hara and still get the same benefit, you're still not allowed to say the entire thing that you wanted to say. And the 7th condition, if this would go to Beis Din, they would pass in something which is less than what you're going to cause this person by your Lashon Hara, so then you're not allowed to say it. And again, as we said before, after you have all the 7 conditions, remember what the Chafetz Chaim said before. If you yourself stumbled in the past on Lashon Hara, or Chalila, you will in the future, retroactively, what you said now, with all the 7 conditions, with a heter, a signed agreement for the Chafetz Chaim, you're allowed to say Lashon Hara, will be counted retroactively as an avera of Lashon Hara. How careful we have to be. One of the Bachrim in the Yeshiva once came to Rabbi Isaac Sher, the Yeshiva of Slobodka. He said to him, Rebbe, I can't stand this sin of Lashon Hara. I have this burning desire in my bones to speak Lashon Hara. Can't overcome it. It's too great of an isayon. You have some kind of an eitzah how to overcome this desire to speak Lashon Hara. Instead of answering him, Rabbi Isaac told him, I want to ask you something. Last week, your father came to me. He came all the way from Haifa. And he made such a great impression. Very, very special man. Tell me, do you also have this burning desire to speak Lashon Hara about your father? And this young man says, Chas v'shalom, of course not. This is my father. I don't want to speak Lashon Hara about it. And Rabbi Isaac says, but why not? It can't be that he doesn't have any shortcomings. There is no tzaddik, a perfect person in the world. I'm sure he has something. So why is it that about your father, you don't have any taiva, any desire to say Lashon Hara, to find anything wrong that he did? And the Talmud says to Rabbi Isaac, I don't understand what the Rebbe wants from me. Whether he has shortcomings or not, this is my father. I don't have any desire to speak Lashon Hara about it. In fact, I heard just recently that somebody spoke Lashon Hara about my father, and I couldn't sleep the whole night. I was so upset. And you're asking me if I want to speak Lashon Hara about my father? And Rabbi Isaac says to him, very nice, but can you tell me why? What's the reason you don't want to say Lashon Hara about your father? And the young man says, because I love him. Says Rabbi Isaac, excellent. And that is the eitzah I'm going to give you regarding saying Lashon Hara about others. You told me you have this burning desire, uncontrollable desire to say Lashon Hara about others. You can't stand this nisayon. My simple suggestion to you, love your friend. Uproot from your heart any kpeda, any hatred, any machlokes. Love everyone in Klal Yisrael. Then you won't have the Yetzer Hara to speak Lashon Hara about him, just like you don't have the Yetzer Hara to speak Lashon Hara about your father. That is the greatest advice to avoid speaking Lashon Hara. In Parashas Vayetze, Yaakov Avinu says, Vayira vayoymar. Yaakov trembled and he said, Manoira hamakom hazeh, ein zeh ki im beis Elokim, v'zeh shar hashamayim. This has got to be the house of God. This is the gate to the heavens. What is? He keeps saying zeh. Ein zeh Ki im beis Elokim. V'zeh sha'ar hashamayim. What is this zeh that he's talking about? Zeh is the letters Zayin Hey. Zayin is 7 and Gematria. Hey is 5. That's 12. What is beis Elokim? Zeh. When there's achdus among the 12 tribes, ein zeh. If there is a zeh, ki im beis Elokim. That's where you find beis Elokim. You want Beis Hamikdash to be rebuilt? Find the achdus. V'zeh. Zeh, the 12, the achdus, the unity among Klal Yisrael. Zeh is Sha'ar Hashamayim. That is what the pasuk in Tehillim Kuf Yud Ches says. Zeh hashar la'Hashem tzadikim yavohu boy. What gate is of the tzadikim? Zeh. Zeh is the shar for the tzadikim. Zeh hashar la'Hashem, the tzadikim enter. Zeh, Zayin Hey, 12, achdus, is the key to open all the gates. In Tehillim Chav Tes Yud Aleph, we all know this pasuk. We finished benching with it. Hashem oz le'amo yiten. Hashem yavarech es amo v'shalom. We normally understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bless Klal Yisrael with peace. I think maybe we can read it differently. Hashem oz le'amo yiten. And Hashem yavarech es amo. But wait a second. You want to be blessed? Question mark. How will you get this blessing? It's all dependent on b'shalom. If there is shalom among us, if there is unity among us, then in fact Hashem Yevarech Es Amo. And this is how we end every day Shmoneh Esrei. HaMevarech Es Amo Yisrael. But wait a second. You want all my blessings, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu? B'shalom, be b'shalom with each other. And then we will be blessed with all the blessings in the Torah. Yehi Ratzon. That the Tisha B'Av of last year, was the last Tisha B'Av that we fasted in. And in Yitzhak Hashem, this year, we will all wish each other Happy Tisha B'Av! Tisha B'Av Sameach! With the building of Beis Hamikdash, B'Kov B'Yameinu, Amen V'Amen.